The literary term for this week is anaphora. You should write down the term and the definition in your Bellringer book. A quick definition from the Glossary of Literary Terms by Abrams is that anaphora is the deliberate repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of each one of a sequence of sentences, paragraphs, lines of verse, or stanzas. Another useful definition comes from that other Bible of English teachers, Fowler's Modern English Usage. The definition here tells us that anaphora is used in rhetoric as the deliberate repetition of the same word or phrase in several successive clauses. From these two definitions, you should realize that anaphora is not simply the random repetition of any words. Let's have a closer look at this linguistic technique. We'll start with some examples from English literature. The opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens shows the technique in use. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. You can see from the repetition of it was at the beginning of each clause that a pattern has been formed. The writer draws our attention to the juxtaposition of the setting and historical period. The novel highlights the differences between the haves and the have-nots in France and England during the 18th century, when both countries were on the brink of revolution. Another example is from the poetry of Walt Whitman. In the light of the 2020 presidential elections in the United States, I thought we could all do with a bit of Whitman's genius. Listen to the use of anaphora in these lines from his poem Great Are the Myths. It was written in the 19th century, but is just as relevant today in a Trump, Pence, Biden, Harris world. Great are the plunges and throes and triumphs and falls of democracy. Great are the reformers with their lapses and screams. Great the daring and venture of sailors on new explorations. Great are yourself and myself. We are just as good and bad as the oldest and youngest or any. What the best and worst did, we could do. What they felt, do not we feel it in ourselves? What they wished, do we not wish the same? That repetition highlights the ironies of humankind. Generally, we all want the same thing. The anaphora here points out the myth that we are truly free individuals. It's a brilliant poem by a brilliant poet. I encourage you to read more of his work, especially with the background of American politics on CNN, Fox News, and other television channels that seem to saturate our news feeds. While we're with American poets, here's an example from the writings of Robert Frost and his poem Acquainted with the Night, in which the speaker recounts his experiences of loneliness and desolation. The repetition of I have highlights these observations. This anaphora gives the speaker's emotions a credibility as he gives a first-hand account of his experiences. I suggest that you pause the video now and read through the poem yourself. Now let's look at some examples from political rhetoric. In case you've forgotten, rhetoric is the way in which we use language to persuade someone of a particular point of view. Speechwriters and politicians often use anaphora in rhetorical speeches. One of the most famous is this one by Winston Churchill to the British public during the dark days of World War II. The anaphora highlights the arduous task ahead, the determination and the sense of common purpose. We shall go on to the end. We shall never surrender. Find a sound clip of the speech on YouTube and listen to this masterful orator employ numerous rhetorical devices to encourage and sway his people. Another masterful orator is Martin Luther King. His famous "I Have a Dream" speech is remarkable, not least because of its use of anaphora, the most famous example of which became the speech's popular title. Listen to the entire speech. It makes use of many, many different rhetorical devices. The speech was delivered in Washington on the 28th of August 1963, but it is as relevant now as it was then. These literary terms are all integral parts of language, and you should be able to analyze any text, be it a poem or a speech, and identify the devices used. You should also be able to offer reasons for why these particular devices, such as anaphora, were chosen, and be able to offer a critique of them, deciding whether they are effective or not. Take note of everything. Who's the author of the text? What format is it? When and where was it written? And who's the intended audience? And what is the text's purpose? Lastly, our very own Thabo Mbeki's 1996 "I Am an African" speech utilizes anaphora with the repetition of "I am." A short extract of the speech is on this slide. The lines, "I am an African. I am formed of the migrants who left Europe. I am the grandchild of the warrior men and women. I am the grandchild who lays fresh flowers on the Boer graves. I am born of a people who do not tolerate oppression," are examples of this technique with the repetition of "I am." There are many other examples in this glorious speech, which never fails to give me goosebumps. I suggest you listen to a recording of it. You'll find it on YouTube. I trust that you now have a better understanding of anaphora. This video is one of a series of BELLRINGER activities. Students should have BELLRINGER books. Mine use hardcover A5 notebooks, in which they jot down the notes, definitions, and reminders from these BELLRINGER videos. If you would like to incorporate more of these BELLRINGER videos in your own teaching or learning, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your friends and colleagues. If you have any suggestions or requests for more BELLRINGER activities, please feel free to send me an email to the address that you see on the screen.